Hello, spooky friends, and welcome to another episode of the Scary-ish podcast.
Woo!
He sounds like you have your woo back.
It's getting there. It's almost fully back. I'm pretty excited about it.
I'm Robin Grace. This is Adam Diaz.
Hello.
And we're here to tell you guys some cool stories.
To tell you guys some cool stories. Indeed, we are. I'm pretty excited. Robin, what are you going to be covering?
I am going to be doing haunted forests because I don't think I've revisited haunted forests since we covered Aokigahara.
Which is the suicide forest in Japan.
Way back in the day.
Yeah, I think those were like single-digit episodes back in the day. We did it right around the time that Logan Paul guy went and did his fuckery over there. So
I don't know. Maybe I have covered forests, but it's been so long that I don't remember that I have. So this week, I'm going to be covering a couple from England.
Cool. I'm going to be covering it's not exactly a haunted forest, but it's a haunted bridge within, I would assume, forested region, but not exactly forest.
Like woods?
Yeah, woods, basically. So
what's the difference?
I'm covering the Goatman's Bridge, so I'm kind of excited to do it. We've got a lot of requests for it, so it's going to be a fun time doing that.
All right.
Before we dive into it, a couple of things. If you folks have scary stories, personal scary stories, stuff that's happened to you, stuff that's happened to a friend, whether it's paranormal, spiritual, maybe it's funny, maybe it wasn't actually a scary story, you were just freaked out at the time, send those to us. The email address is storytime@scarish.com. You can go to the website scarish.com, click on contact us, fill that out, or hit us up on any of our social medias. Twitter's @ScarishPod, Instagram @ScarishPodcast, and Facebook is facebook.com/ScarishPodcast. You can message us there and give us your stories. Second thing, Robin, on June 9th, we're doing something. What is that?
Yeah, we're going to the Winchester Mansion and in San Jose, California. And we're going to bring like film equipment and stuff. It's going to be kind of cool.
Yeah, we're going to have a good old time. We're going to do the tour. We've already booked our tickets. We've booked our travel. So if you would like to join us, you can. Go to Winchester Mansion. I think it's actually winchestermysteryhouse.com. Buy tickets for June 9th, and you can select a time. The time we will be taking our tour is 12 p.m., so noon. High noon. If you would like to join us, that's when it will be. Let us know when you get your tickets. That way we can all be like, oh my God, we're going to go together. And more importantly, we can coordinate with you on our social medias.
Yeah.
That way we can all make sure we meet up. And we're going to be in the area a little bit early, so perhaps we can do something before Winchester.
Go get boba, something
we'll
like that.
We'll do something like that. We'll do a meetup, but it'll be fun. You don't necessarily have to go, but if you're in the region and you like to meet up, that's what we're going to be there for. We're super, super excited. We're skipping a lot of the conferences that we got invited to that are on the exact same day down in LA, which is a little bit heartbreaking, but that's okay because we told you folks we were going to do this, and damn it, we are going to do it, and I'm actually really excited too. So we hope you are too, and we hope you'll come see us. So June 9th at noon, winchestermysteryhouse.com. Go get your tickets if you're going to join us. It's going to be a fun time. That said, I guess we can just jump into our topics, right?
Yeah.
So you're going first, so take it away.
All right. So this week, I am going to do two different forests from England, the Wychwood Forest and the Epping Forest.
Wychwood definitely sounds creepy.
It's not even spelled like witch, though. It's W-Y-C-H.
Oh, wow.
Witch. Yeah.
How disappointing.
They definitely have a few haunted stories in each one. They're definitely not big enough to have their own episodes, which is why I put them together.
That makes sense.
But I'm going to start with Wychwood because it's like the shorter one, and then I'm going to do the other one after, I guess. But so the Wychwood Forest is a former royal forest. So back in the day, monarchs had their own special area where they went hunting and no one else could go hunt in there.
Like Sherwood Forest.
Right.
You can't kill a deer in the king's forest.
Is that from the movie?
I mean, that's from Robin Hood in general. Like, they talk about it like there's the kid that runs away. I mean, I'm thinking exclusively of Robin Hood Men in Tights. Where he's like, he dared to kill a king's dare.
All right.
You're acting like you've never seen this movie, and it really upsets me because you pretend like you love this movie, and when I try and quote it, you're just blank faced.
Sorry.
So, fun.
Is that where Robert Baratheon got killed from Game of Thrones?
Yeah, it must be.
Well, I mean, in his own royal forest.
I mean, he was just hunting. I don't know if it was his own royal forest or anything, but yes, he got killed while hunting. Good call. Okay.
So
the season 1 callback for all you Game of Thrones enthusiasts.
So it's a former royal forest located in a small area of rural Oxfordshire. I don't know how to say it properly.
Oxfordshire is how it's spelled.
Yes.
So.
It used to cover a lot more area than it does now in centuries past. But over time, it's been cleared away for agriculture or to put villages in or towns, that type of thing. But they do have like fairs now to kind of bring back the forest. They've planted new trees, stuff like that, which is kind of cool.
That is cool.
There is a legend in this surrounding this forest about someone named Amy Robsart, Robsart, Robsart. She was the wife of the Earl of Leicester. Leicester?
Are you going to do that with every single thing? You can't just be confident in one of them.
Cester. And the story goes to the tune of Amy having had mysteriously died of a broken neck after falling down a staircase at Cumnor Place, probably where she lived. Supposedly murdered, because what are the odds that you would break your neck falling down the stairs? I mean,
if you fell down the stairs, the odds are pretty high that you're going to get injured. But did you fall or were you pushed? I guess?
The idea that she was murdered was supported by the fact that her ghost would haunt that staircase, and then she would appear in front of her husband while he was hunting in Witchwood Forest, and her ghost told him that he would be dead within 10 days.
Wow. So it's just
kind of like the
Ring.
Yeah. Or Ringu, whichever version you watched or enjoy more.
The only pretentious douche out there who watched Ringu is Garrett. And I know he's probably listening, and that's 100% true because I watched it with him.
Which one do you like better?
I actually like Ring better because it doesn't have like spontaneous psychic abilities and a character to fill in a plot hole. That really annoyed me about Ringu, where the guy all of a sudden has a vision. He's like, "Oh, this is what we need to do." I was just like, so you wouldn't have known that had you not had this vision and all of a sudden had psychic abilities which never manifest again. I was just like, what the F is this nonsense?
Okay, so she's like, "You're gonna be dead in 10 days," kind of like in The Ring, where she's like, 7 days, and the Earl died in 10 days.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's thought that her ghost does the same to those who come across her these days. So if someone says...
So if you see her ghost, you have 10 days.
Don't watch the videotape.
Yeah, just don't watch the videotape, people.
Yeah, I just think that's really crazy. And that's why people were like, she was murdered. Because why else would she show up in front of her husband like, you gonna die?
Maybe she was evil. I mean, Freddy Krueger was technically murdered, but he was like justifiably murdered because he got let off. Just saying. Like, in the remake of the Elm Street, Nightmare on Elm Street, they make it seem like he was, like, murdered out of cold blood, and then it turns out, like, no, he was a child killer and a child molester, and that's why the parents killed him. What do you mean, when?
Wait, in which movie?
The remake of Nightmare on Elm Street, the one with the guy who played Rorschach as Freddy.
Oh my gosh, I haven't seen it.
You've never seen it's not that good, to be honest with you. You might as well just watch the original.
Oh, okay.
So, but yeah. What I'm saying is a vengeful spirit doesn't always have to be an innocent person who was wronged in their death. Sometimes it's just like an evil person who decided to stick around.
All right.
Like, what's the name of that? Oh, The Conjuring, yeah. Like, that chick that's sticking around is like the ghost of that witch who, like,
I see what
did
you're
something
saying.
horrible and hung around. So sometimes you shouldn't always blame the people that are around. I mean,
sometimes.
Most of the time.
Dead's better. Okay, continuing on. Those that have been to Witchwood have claimed to see apparitions of crying children driven by a man in a ghostly horse-drawn carriage and have been touched by ghostly hands. Ghostly hands.
She put her hands on me.
Visitors have also experienced bouts of nausea, which apparently is common when it comes to being in the presence of like spirits and things like that.
I haven't heard it often in a lot of the stuff that we've done, but I have heard of that, like getting sick because you're around something like that.
Yeah. Sounds heard in the forest range from disembodied whispers to shouts to even the sound of unseen horses walking through the forest. That would be creepy. Like the Thestrals from Harry Potter.
I knew you were going to bring up Harry Potter. The wagon's pulling itself, Harry.
Well, but you hear the horse's like breath, you know? That would be creepy. If I was just walking and I heard the breath of a horse while they're walking right next to me.
Well, a horse is gigantic. Like, I don't think your head would immediately go to horse. It would go to like whatever local legend, like maybe a Goatman. You'd be like, I heard a Goatman breathing behind me. It wouldn't be ghost horse. It's not the first thing you jump to.
That's true. The stories also tell of roaming hobgoblins, witches, and demons as well. So
that's a lot of shit.
Yeah, keep an eye out for all those. But when I think of forests in England, that kind of stuff just jumps into my head because there's so much lore and so many legends about those creatures being in all these forests in the UK. And Ireland and Scotland and things like that.
I want to make a Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe joke, but I have one in my script, so I'm just going to save it for my script.
Okay. There's also a tree in the area that's been referred to as the hanging tree, which is funny because in the next forest, there's something called the Hangman's Hill.
Really? So, does Jennifer Lawrence sing about both of them?
Oh, no. Okay. So it was used to hang criminals that were sentenced to death, obviously. And, well, I mean, not obviously.
I mean, it's pretty obvious. I mean, they wouldn't hang a criminal who's been sentenced to like 2 days in the stockade.
In the next one, it's a little different. So, visitors to this tree have reported feeling a male presence around the tree and feelings of oppression and dread, which, considering what has happened there, makes sense. These days, you can attend some of these forest fairs in the area that are kind of cool. They're like Renaissance fairs.
I knew you were going to say it, Renaissance. I hate
I
you
actually
so much.
looked up the word Renaissance on Wikipedia, and it says UK is pronounced Renaissance, and in the US, it's Renaissance. So.
You're such a Ted Mosby. That's all I'm saying.
Anyway, so that is the stories that I found of Witchwood Forest,
Okay.
which is why it's so short. And then Epping Forest, I guess, is a much bigger area. So there's a lot more stories, a lot more places to go within this forest, which is kind of cool. Epping Forest is just like Witchwood Forest in that it is also a formerly royal forest, like hunting ground. And it's on the border between Essex and Greater London.
Do you think that royals made up stories about their forests being haunted to
so
keep
people would stay out of it?
just to keep people out of it, and then they'd just be hunting in there on their own, like stupid assholes.
Wouldn't they want to make stories that are scarier? Because I could see, okay, seeing some apparitions would be creepy, but wouldn't you want it to be scarier where it's like, if you go, this thing will kill you?
I think they want it to be scary enough where people won't question why they're going into it, but at the same time won't venture in themselves. Like, that's kind of the sweet spot where you're like, if there's this horrible evil beast that kills everything that enters, how come you guys aren't getting killed?
Okay.
Versus like, there's some scary shit in there, don't go in there. Trust me, I've seen it. I go in there all the time. So I don't know. That's just the first thing that came to my head. Like, it's one of those things where like you want to keep it for yourself, and rather than like have to do a bunch of policing of your forest, you just try and scare people away from it. Like the whole Greenland has ice and Iceland is green.
Whoever did that is
very clever.
Yes.
And people are also very
so
stupid
mean.
for falling for it.
Okay. So most of the forest hauntings are reported in the High Beach and Epping New Road areas. I've never been to either of these places, so I have no idea where they are, but I would love to see London and the UK one day. I think that'd be really cool. The forest is only 15 miles away from the site of the Enfield poltergeist, so that is kind of cool.
That makes sense why you asked me if we've covered it yet.
Yes, I literally was typing stuff up. I'm like, have you covered this yet? But you have.
I'm not sure if I did or you did, but one of us has.
One of us has. So I thought that was really cool. It'll be cool when we go to the UK one day and be able to see some creepy places, some haunted locations. I think that'd be really fun to do. But while I do this, I'm going to definitely give a lot of credit to theerieplace.com because they had so much awesome information about this forest. Like, it was so detailed. It was so cool. You're awesome. Thank you.
Some websites are just like hit or miss, and some websites are super detailed, and we always try and give them shout outs when that's the case.
There's a place in Epping Forest called Lofton Camp that has a few theories, apparently, behind why it was built. The first theory was that it was used during tribal battles, so to defend one tribe defending themselves from a rival tribe. Another theory was that it was used to protect cattle. And the third theory was that it was built as a lookout post, which is kind of
pretty
cool.
Straightforward theory.
There's an area southwest of this supposed lookout post. So southwest of this camp is called Kate's Cellar, and it's just like a little cave. Apparently a hermit used to live there in 1313. So
just a little while ago.
Not too long ago. And I guess the name stuck because she was just a hermit, lived there. I guess they just named it Kate's Cellar because she lived there.
And her name was Kate? Or did they just decide to call her Kate?
I don't know. I'm not a historian, so I'm not sure. This is just what I read. And I'm literally the person they make those commercials about where they believe everything they read on the internet.
I hate you so much.
It's rumored that a criminal by the name of Dick Turpin used Kate's Cellar as a hideout during the 1700s, and he was known as a highwayman. He was a criminal who turned to a life of highway robbery, and they called him Turpin the Butcher, probably because his father was a butcher, and so in his early life, he followed in his father's footsteps. Followed in his father's footsteps, but eventually turned to a life of thievery, and he stole deer, he poached, he stole horses.
He dared to poach a king's deer?
He stole horses, he burglarized, and he even killed. So this guy was a jack of all criminal trades, I guess. And while researching this, I kind of chuckled because we just watched Highwaymen.
Which is a completely different movie. Which is a completely different
movie. But I realize why that movie is called Highwaymen now. Because of what highwaymen are. Like just robbers. They're like thieves that freaking murder people on the road.
Yeah. I'm glad you finally figured that out after kind of watching that movie and falling asleep.
I did
like
fall
2/3
asleep.
of the way through it.
It was very slow paced.
It was. There was a lot of dialogue in that movie.
Turpin used to watch the road from his hideout, so from Kate's cellar, for any travelers that he could totally just ambush and rob and hold at gunpoint. And he lived in the forest in order to evade capture before fleeing to Yorkshire. So he spent quite a bit of time in that forest just dilly-dallying.
Dilly-dilly.
Where did I hear that the other day? We went to a baseball game and someone said dilly-dilly. And I was just like, dilly-dilly. I don't know. I love that commercial. Anyway, because he spent so much time in that forest, a ghost has been seen of a man in a tricorn hat. And it's one of those hats that you see in old movies where the redcoats wore them, those triangle.
I think the Patriots did too.
Yeah. If you've played Fallout 4, there's a character in there who's a ghoul by the name of Hancock. You meet him like in one of the towns. He becomes your companion. He wears one of those hats.
For those of you who don't know, who aren't from the United States of America, during the American Revolution, the British are referred to as the redcoats, and the I guess American settlers who rebelled are referred to as the Patriots. Like growing up in 5th grade, I studied the American Revolution, and we had 2 classes, like 5A and 5B, and 5A were the Patriots and 5B were the Redcoats. And so we'd have like little events where we compete against each other, kind of like a field day that lasted like 3 months as we studied it. And I just realized, like, anyone who listens who's not from this country are like, who the hell are the Patriots and the Redcoats? Like, I've heard of the New England Patriots, like Tom Brady, but who are the Redcoats? Oh. That's what we're talking about when we say those things.
Okay, so yes, so he wore a tricorn hat. And I guess tricorn might be short for like triple corner because it's a triangle. But again, not a historian. This ghost is seen wearing this hat with a dark cape while riding a black horse. And apparently...
That's just badass. That's a good look. I'm not going to lie.
Apparently, it's a common apparition in the High Beach area of the forest. Because Dick Turpin lived there and did so much crime there, they assume that that's the ghost of him. The ghost of Dick.
Isn't that a My Chemical Romance song, The Ghost of Dick?
It's called The Ghost of You. So I guess that makes sense because you're a dick.
Wow, well played.
Thanks. Did you see that one coming?
No. It was a long walk to get there, so I don't think anyone did.
Okay. So it's rumored that if you listen closely on certain nights, you can hear groaning and drumming from that camp, which I think is kind of cool. And paranormal investigators have come up with strange recordings of what seems to be like a rhythmic sound. And you could say maybe that's the sound of ghostly drumming, maybe?
So if you're going through this forest and you hear like... You're like, oh no, it's the highwayman, and he shows up with his fucking glow sticks and robs you.
You might also see apparitions of 3 women walking along the road near the camp as well. So lots of different apparitions show up.
A little bit different. Why 3 women?
It's just said that you can see them. You might come across them. So someone has witnessed that before.
Okay.
Then there is the Wake Arms Roundabout. And this roundabout happens to be an accident black spot. And funny enough, maybe it's not funny at all, but I had to look up what an accident black spot was.
I was literally about to ask you that.
And an accident black spot is, in road safety management, a location where road traffic accidents are notorious to occur. So places like sharp turns, places where oncoming traffic isn't visible or anything.
Blind corners, stuff like that.
Right. Lack of warning signs.
There was one where I grew up on Division and Smoke Road. Anyone who's back home knows what I'm talking about. I think they wound up putting a stop sign after like the 3rd person died there.
Wow.
There were car accidents constantly. It was a blind hill, and it was like a 50-mile-per-hour zone. So if you're coming over the hill, you basically cross your fingers and hope whoever's at the stop sign hasn't decided to go because they couldn't see you. and it was just accident after accident. It was literally like, if you just put an effing stop sign there, this stops. And then eventually, like, someone died, and it was related to someone who had the power to actually, like, put a friggin' stop sign there.
Yeah.
And then it went away. But I just remember growing up, like, reading in the newspaper, like, oh, someone died on Smoke Road again. And it's only a matter of time before there's ghost stories about Smoke Road. Just saying.
It's called Smoke Road.
It's because it's not paved.
It's just asking
it's
for
all gravel.
like ghost stories.
So you're never going to stop, first of all, if you're on a fucking gravel road and you see a car that's going in front of you when you're not supposed to stop. And the only way you can tell that there's a car coming if it's not over the hill is because you can, see the dirt it's kicking up. So
nice.
It's like, yeah, it's one of those things where it's like foreboding, like someone set that up like, well, this will make a nice ghost story in 100 years.
The fact that this place, this Wake Arms roundabout, is a black spot may explain the numerous apparitions that are said to appear there. And you may see yet another ghostly horse-drawn carriage, some headless bikers or headless horsemen. There's even the ghost of a sad young girl that drowned near King Oak's pub that's often seen. And drivers have even been frightened after seeing a person in the middle of the road in front of their cars before the figures vanish. That would freak me out.
That would really freak me out. I'd also be very grateful if I was about to hit what I thought was a person and it turned into dust.
Yeah.
I'd be like, oh, thank God for ghost encounters. I didn't want to go to jail.
Unless they end up like sitting in the back of your car because you drove through
I think
them.
I'd still be pretty pleased that I didn't murder a human being.
My pants.
I'd be scared, don't get me wrong, but there would be some relief that I didn't just create a ghost.
Yeah, that's true. Oh, man. This just freaks me out. Okay. Hangman's Hill is also another place in the High Beach area. It's not actually a mapped hill, but a little bit of road between what's called Avie Lane and Pinest Green Lane. I'm sure it's Pinest. The pines are the greenest. It's one of those cool, weird gravity hills, which...
that is cool.
Yeah. So you park your car at the bottom of the hill.
Put it in neutral.
Yep. You turn your engine off, put it in neutral, and then you find your car rolls up the hill. And it's supposedly just an optical illusion. But wouldn't it be cool if it were real? Like, just...
It would be super cool if it was real. I've actually heard of this when I've seen them do the studies. It's because, like, the landscape that's next to your car is at a slope where it looks like you're going up, but realistically the road is going down, so it looks like you're rolling uphill.
Yeah,
but it's cool. It is an optical illusion on that one.
I mean, it'd be really neat and creepy, but mostly neat. I mean, if
there was an area on the planet that defied gravity and you were able to roll uphill, that
now
would be
freaking
freaking sweet.
Think of is that song from Wicked.
I've never heard any of the songs from Wicked.
Okay. It's called Hangman's Hill because there's supposedly a tree, ancient, so the legend says, where 3 innocent men were hung. So that's why I was like, it's not really...
Not always guilty people
right.
who were hung. Got it.
According to legend, your car is being pulled up the hill towards this ancient tree by a hangman's noose.
Are you going to get hung if you get there? How does that work?
It doesn't say that you get hung. It's just like the legend says your car is being pulled up the hill by this noose towards this tree.
Okay. That's silly. That's a lot of effort for a ghost to pull your car uphill.
It's just local legend.
I know. I mean, mine's a local legend too, and we'll poke holes in that too.
At night, you might even hear screams coming from the hill in the dark. Or it might just be Adam being a douche sitting in his car at the top of the hill screaming to scare people.
Woo!
No. Not like that. That wouldn't scare me. I'd be like, dang, that ghost is annoying.
If you hear that, you'd be like, oh, wow, like that's a ghost. The other thing I was thinking about, and I don't know why I was thinking about this, is like, if I was ever trapped in a place where someone couldn't get me, because I always read about these like cave rescues where I'm sure they're like, is anyone in there? And they usually tap like a pipe in Morse code. I wouldn't tap Morse code. And like, if you heard some tapping and you knew it was me because of the tapping, what would the noise be, Robin? This is a test. It's going to be the Terminator theme song.
Oh.
Boom, 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 boom. Like, if you heard that, you'd be like, he's alive. And you start crying because you wished I was dead. But anyways, go ahead and get back to your thing.
I think your woos will ripple through time.
They might. Just depends on if something very violent happens, which is very likely because you really, really hate them. So,
also in High Beach is the Church of Holy Innocents, which just sounds ominous when added to a story like this.
Over the top. The Church of Not Haunted.
The church was built in 1863 by Thomas Baring of Baring Brothers Bank, and they named the church in honor of his children who died young, hence, Holy Innocents. And which is funny, though, because I feel like I went to Holy Innocents preschool or something when I was younger. I don't know. repressed memories or something.
It's like, I don't have the history of Robin in front of me, so I can't tell you.
The area around the church has been rumored to be connected to satanic rituals, cannibalism, and ancient tribal warfare.
It's good eating.
Apparently, has to be ancient burial grounds somewhere, and hence ghosts or poltergeists or whatever happens when you're on an ancient burial ground. But in an area that is linked to so much history, because if stories go back to 1313, I mean, so much history means so much has happened on this land, and it's not surprising that ghosts or apparitions exist, like ripples through time or something like that, you know what I mean? And witnesses have seen apparitions of small hooded figures, as well as a gray figure that stands in the middle of the road next to the church. During a paranormal investigation, a group saw figures carrying lanterns going through the trees, which just creeps me out because it screams culty activity.
Yeah, without a doubt. There's certain things that are just like, that's a cult. I can't remember what the My Favorite Murder slogan is. Like, you're in a cult, call your dad.
Yeah.
But that's one of those things where it should just be a red flag.
Drivers have even reported having engine troubles while driving through this area. So that's weird.
That's creepy as, like, let's just be real.
Well,
like, if you're driving through a creepy area and your car starts to sputter, like, immediately, I'm just going to, like, I'm going to get murdered. Like, this is where I die.
There's a part of Vegas that when I drive through it, my phone loses all signal. I don't know how anyone could live there.
They probably just don't have your carrier.
I don't know. It's just, it goes dead in that area. And it's a really popular, really populated area. And I'm just mind blown by just driving through this. Everything just loses signal. It's weird.
And if I'm talking to her, it's just like,
yeah.
And I always just go like, I have no idea what you said. Like, I don't try and pretend anymore. Like, I heard someone, I just like, I don't know what you said. Then I'm like, this is what I hear after I say that. It's like, because she's angry because her phone's not working. And I'm just like, I'm just going to be silent and wait. And then she'll say something like, are you still there? I'm like, now you sound perfect. Okay, we're good. Like, please don't be angry at me because your phone stopped working.
Okay, anyway, last but not least is the suicide pool in Epping Forest. The forest is home to several small bodies of water, many of which are said to be haunted, because why not? And this particular one is a mythical pool. Like, there's stories dating back 300 years of this pool. No one knows where it is. No one knows the exact location. Elliot O'Donnell wrote about this secret pond said to be home of evil presences. And one story of this pond is of a young couple who were secretly meeting each other at the pool within the forest. And in Romeo and Juliet fashion, the girl's father disapproved of their relationship. Big surprise.
Right.
In this story, though, the father goes into a rage about the relationship because he just can't deal with it and kills his daughter at this pond. And her lover then kills himself at that exact spot because he was so just heartbroken over his girlfriend lover getting murdered. Some say that this pond contains some type of evil power that makes people commit suicide, because since the death of the lovers, a woman and a young servant named Emma Morgan and her child have mysteriously died near the pool or committed suicide near the pool.
That's pretty crazy.
And the location isn't actually known. These are just stories.
Right. It's still super creepy to think of that, though. Like, if
really,
something
really
like that
creepy.
existed that, like, push you towards that, it's just, I don't know. That's one of the creepier things I think I've heard of a local legend.
Right. Other sources that I saw online, though, were like, we have seen the pool before, and people that have visited this pool feel this force, like, pulling them towards it. But then other sources are like, no one knows where it is. It's not marked on a map. You have to figure it out.
You just found a random pool and decided that must be suicide.
Right.
Pool. Right on.
Within the forest, people have claimed to have been pushed or shoved, and there's no shortage of ghosts and apparitions that have been seen. And so if you're looking for creepy, I see this one's not a bad place to go.
It does sound pretty awesome.
Sounds pretty cool.
If we visit, I definitely want to try it out.
I don't want to go near
there.
the church, though.
I would go to all these places. I think it's really fun to investigate the local lore, because even if you don't have something happen, you might like experience some part of the culture that makes you understand like why this legend came about, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, it'd be neat. Head to Essex.
Sorry. Right on. So that was really good. I think it's good that you put those two together because it wound up being like perfect length for a topic. So good job,
thanks.
Robin. So
Thank
I'm gonna
you,
go
England.
Yeah, thanks England for having all those ghosts. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to my topic, and quick shout out to all of our patrons. Thank you so much for signing up. We usually do this at the end of the show. I think so many of you people turn off as soon as we start doing the outro. I just want to put that in there. Also go sign up at patreon.com, $1 a month.
Oh,
seriously.
yeah. Right now, too, we have a discount code for patrons exclusively for our Teespring store for the month of May.
It's gonna be
if
May.
you join Patreon, there is discount code. I think it's 10% off, but you can, if once you join, you can see the post, see the code, go to Teespring, order whatever you want, get 10% off. It's kind of cool.
And realistically, if you're going to buy one thing and you sign up for $1 to be a patron, like in the end, you end up saving money. So it's kind of a smart thing to do. We'd appreciate it. But I'm going to go ahead now and move on to my topic for realsies this time. And this week, I decided to cover something that the listeners have been requesting for a while. Realistically, this has been a very sickly week for our household. We're all going up and down, including we had a dog that was pooping everywhere. It was really gross. So, I was like, I'm not going to try and think of something that's going to blow people's minds. I want people to tell me how they want their minds blown. So I thought of some of the things that you folks have requested from us, and it's not like we received a ton of emails requesting this one, but it's been posted either on the Scary-ish Spooky Friends group on Facebook or in the Discord at least 3 or 4 times. And I love me a good local legend. I didn't know that Robin was going to pick a local legend, but again, we kind of like intertwined these topics, which
It's like
kind
our
of works.
brain waves we're on the same wavelength.
Yeah, we definitely are on this one, and it happens a lot. But like with all local legends, there is not a great amount of documentation to go along with this, but it's still a popular topic despite that. So everyone take this with a grain of salt. But that said, I mentioned this earlier, I will be covering the Goatman's Bridge. So when I originally started writing my script, I included a Goatman joke, and it was like a Goat Boy joke from this Jim Brewer stand-up. It's actually a skit. I knew you were going to say that, from SNL back in the day. He's a comedian. He was in Half Baked. He's the guy that always looks stoned. But I took it out because I was like, I don't think anyone's going to get this, and I hate everyone for it. So I just wanted to mention that I had to take that out. And obviously Robin wasn't going to get it because she doesn't know who Jim Brewer is. But that said, I have to admit, even though I've heard of Goatman's Bridge, I wasn't sure exactly where it was located until I started doing this research, because for some reason I thought this was in the Midwest, probably because there's so many bridge legends and there's all these different names for them. And I'm pretty sure when I was back home, someone told me that the Goatman's Bridge was in the Midwest because people like to lie and say things are all nearby. It is in Texas, in fact. You are correct. And it's actually named the Old Alton Bridge. That's its real name. And it's located on Old Alton Road, not to be confused with Old Alton Drive, because those are 2 separate roads back where this is located, for those of you who might be near it and want to check it out. And it connects the towns of Denton and Copper Canyon in Texas. And side note, this is just north of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So I'm not shocked that you knew it was in Texas, because you know the Dallas-Fort Worth area a little bit, which is super cool.
Thanks.
Now, the bridge itself was constructed in 1884 by the King
Why you
Iron...
gotta say it like that?
Because of South Park. By the King Iron and Bridge Manufacturing Company, and it's made of iron and wood. So essentially the trusses are iron, and what you drive over is wood. So what's funny about the bridge is that it's named after a community that was basically disbanded by the time it was built, like 20, 30 years before. Alton or Old Alton or whatever it was called, this community just kind of split up and formed like separate towns, and they still named the bridge after it. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And a little over 100 years after it was built, in 1988, it was officially added to the list of National Registered Historic Places. So it's actually a historic landmark. Not exactly landmark, but it's a place that is registered as historic.
Can you still drive over it?
You can. You absolutely can. You can visit it. You can go and check it out if you'd like to, and tell us whether or not you actually think it's haunted. So congratulations to that bridge. And the end. This is a great topic suggestion, folks. We really appreciate it. It is truly a tribute to the rapidly deteriorating infrastructure in our country, and that is what's truly scary-ish. And this is Adam signing out. So I'm just kidding. There's way more in my script. But apparently there's something paranormal here also. So who would have guessed with a name like Goatman's Bridge? The local legend, like any good local legend, has multiple accounts of where this legend comes from. And let's cover the most popular version, and then we'll get to the other ones. So the most popular version that I can find, and I hope you hear my air quotes, is back in the early 1900s, 1930s or so, there was a farmer by the name of Oscar Washburn. And he and his family owned a farm in the area, and they had on their farm, you guessed it, goats. And they did pretty well for themselves. They sold milk and cheese, which are things that you naturally have if you're raising goats. And they also sold hides and meat, which is what you have if you're going to raise goats to maturity and eventually, kill them. or they die or whatever of natural causes. They probably died in their sleep with smiles on their faces, and then their skin was taken off and their meat was harvested.
I'm just imagining that scene from It now. Thank you.
I'm just imagining lamb chops, and it just sounds so goddamn good. Or I don't know.
I imagined that puppet when you said lamb chops.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. Yeah, throw that thing over some fire. I bet you it's delicious. So the local people in the area would go to the Washburn farm to purchase these things, and to ensure they wouldn't get lost, Oscar put up a sign that read, "This way to the Goatman." So he had given himself a solid nickname, and now we have the beginnings of an origin story. And unlike Batman, no parents had to die for the Goatman. So naturally, as the late 1930s began to creep in, things took a tragic turn. And I say naturally because this is a local legend, and things like this don't crop up from happy things happening. And it wouldn't be much of a local legend if this wasn't like a horrific thing that took place. And according to the story, the local chapter of the Ku Klux Klan was not happy with Oscar Washburn making a good living. And as you can probably guess now, Oscar and his family were African American.
Oh, no.
So this group of hood-wearing racist jagoffs decided they'd wait for a night with no moon. And the reason you wait for a night, as a person who did a lot of TPing when he was a kid, you wait for a night with no moon so that you can blend in with the darkness and there's no natural light so that you can be seen. And when you do stuff like that, it's easier to sneak around and to not be seen by wearing black to blend in. Cut back to the story, and these dingleberries decided to go get their whitest sheets and cut some holes in them to, blend in with the darkness because they're idiots. And they headed over to the Washburn home. They drove across the old Alton Bridge, according to the story, with their headlights off so that they wouldn't be seen to reach the farm. Keep that in mind. Don't forget that. So they surrounded the home and broke in and dragged Oscar outside. And they dragged him to the nearby bridge known as the old Alton Bridge. And they fastened a noose to the bridge and to Oscar and threw him over the side of the bridge, effectively killing him. And I mean, it's a horrible thing to picture, but realistically, this rope goes taut. They feel satisfied because they've done this horrible thing. And as if that's not horrific enough, they decide that they're going to basically climb down the slopes that lead to the Hickory Creek, which is the body of water that the bridge spans, to see like the fruits of their labor, so to speak.
What?
And when they got down there to see this body hanging from the rope, it was empty. There was nothing in the noose. And
shut up.
They freaked the fuck out. And like, because this guy, there's two things. Either he died and then he disappeared, which is terrifying, or he wasn't dead and they might not get away with this brutal murder that they had attempted. So they searched the area and the creek and found no sign of Oscar Washburn. And then they did what any racist piece of human garbage would do. They went back to the Washburn household. They boarded it up and they set it on fire with Oscar's family inside, hoping the screams of his family would lure him out so that they could finish the job. And at this point, I put, side note, I bet you kind of wished I would have stopped at the bridge's history and just left it there, because this is a really horrific story. And it's disgusting what they did, but Oscar never showed. And no one ever saw Oscar again. And this horrible act, after this horrible act, locals began to report strange happenings at the bridge. We are going to get to those in a little bit. Before we get to those, I'm going to tell you the other origin stories. So the other legend that I found dates back to the 1860s. So this took place before the bridge was even built. And in this legend, a Creole slave who was also a goat herder known as Jack Kendall had escaped from the southern states and was trying to make his way to the north where he could, not be murdered. Because as those of you who recognize the 1860s know, this is Civil War time period. And Texas was not exactly a friendly state to be in, but he was trying to make his way out. And a group of Copper Canyon, which is the nearby town, cowboys, took exception to this human being who had different colored skin, and they formed a posse and they hunted down Jack. And not going to give you the long, gruesome details, but they also murdered him by hanging him. But they used a tall tree that was on the banks of this creek. Somehow, and this is one of those grain of salt things because this is a local legend, somehow the hanging resulted in Jack's head removing from his body. So his body is...
How hard did they throw him?
His body essentially collapsed to the ground. I've read multiple stories of this one, and a couple of them state that his head stayed in the noose. And I was like, no, that's not how physics work. Like, I know I'm reading a story about a goat man. I know I'm watching a show about dragons, but that's pretty stupid. Like, that's how I think with Game of Thrones when I watch stuff. But realistically, this is a local legend. But the body collapsed to the ground, and the cowboys were just like, oh, wow, that's weird. I've never seen that before. And then the headless body of Jack Kendall stood up. And the cowboys were absolutely horrified. And again, this is a legend, but it's claimed that Jack Kendall was a practitioner of voodoo and had placed some sort of spell on himself that would raise him in the case of his death. And this particular detail that I'm about to tell you is unclear as to whether it happened immediately afterwards or if it happened a few days later after Jack's body had risen. But the headless body of Jack Kendall found a goat, ripped its head off, and placed it on top of its newly found neck stump.
This sounds not real.
This sounds bullshit. I know. What I think's so funny about this is so many of the sites I found this story on say that like he basically raised up and then in the middle of these woods there was just a goat there like, bah, what's up? And he just turned and just ripped this fucking thing's head off. And I'm just like, well, now I feel bad for the goat,
how
too.
Cool that would look, just this headless dude walking around. And then he takes my mind is going off the rails right now, just imagining this happening.
It's weird that you think it would look cool watching a headless human body rip the head of a goat off. I think it would be horrific and very bloody. But basically the way it's described is this happens right away. And it sounds like when like Lego characters like interchange their heads when you just pop it right off. And I was like, I don't think those anatomies really line up, but whatever. But the tree he was hung from is supposedly no longer standing. It was supposedly cut down to make room for, you guessed it, the old Alton Bridge. And one detail I found on a couple of websites, which is probably made up along with the rest of this, states that some of the wood from that tree was used to make up the old Alton Bridge that you drive across.
I believe that, though.
And that's like, I think it's a really good detail. I think it's a really nice thing to toss in there if you're making up a local legend where it's like, the tree doesn't exist, but this is why the bridge is haunted. So there's even yet another story that states that Oscar Washburn, our first Goatman, isn't the Goatman, but it's in fact his wife. And after she was burned, she came back as a vengeful spirit, and she's like technically the goat woman. And what's really annoying is when I found this legend on all the different websites, they're probably all referencing the same story from somewhere, but the entity is actually known as the Goatman's wife, not the goat woman.
Huh.
And it's just like, side note, if this is the actual case and the Goatman is real and it's really the goat woman and you're calling it the Goatman's wife, even though she's the goat woman, that's just like extra salt in the wound of the undeath that she suffers from. Like,
I deserve my own name.
Yeah, it's like, how shitty are you towards women that you can't just say goat woman? Everyone's like, oh, the Goatman's wife over there. And she's like, and she's just like freaking the fuck out.
This is why she murders people. Wait, does she murder people?
No, I actually put something in there about murdering, and then like, well, I assume she would if like she existed, or if anyone ever had like a face-to-face encounter. But we'll get to what happens with that. And there's quite a few folks who simply don't believe in these origin stories at all. Like, after all, if you try and look up records of any of these people, you come up empty. And they believe in the far more rational reasoning that Satanists have performed horrific rituals on this bridge that have opened up some sort of portal or perhaps a hellmouth. And as a side note, I hate you for watching Buffy again because I can't stand the fact that word was in my brain.
Oh my gosh. I just got to season 4.
It's so bad. So now you know the terrible origin of the Goatman and the Goatman's bridge. So the next question for most of our listeners is naturally, how do you summon him forth? Because I'm going to go there. And what's a local legend if you can't like investigate it and possibly be terrified or maybe even murdered by it? So you simply need to go to the old Alton Bridge, and I told you earlier what the road was. And if you drive across slowly with your lights off, it's said that by the time you reach the other side, it'll be standing in the middle of the road, none other than the Goatman himself. And the legend also states that if you park your car with its lights off on the bridge, you can knock on the iron beams 3 times, and this will summon the Goatman. As a side note, everything is knocked 3 times or say it 3 times.
Well, you know why? It's because it's the rule of 3. It's an actual fantasy thing, the rule of 3. So like the 3 little pigs, the 3 fairy godmothers.
Doesn't that have to do with like the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit? Like that whole Holy Trinity thing? Like it's the inverse of it?
I don't know about that, but I was in a class and we watched Pan's Labyrinth. And if you watch Pan's Labyrinth, everything follows the rule of 3. We'll watch it together, and I'll show you.
Cool.
It'll be cool.
So that's how you summon the Goatman. And people who have tried to do this have reported quite a few things. It's said that you can see red eyes staring at you from the tree line that eventually make their way towards the bridge. It's also said that prior to any sightings that you have, you can hear hooves stomping around in the forest and eventually on the wood of the bridge itself, which is super creepy.
That's super creepy.
Another extremely common occurrence when trying to summon forth the Goatman is a horrific smell that shows up, and it's supposedly the smell of decaying flesh. And I would have thought sulfur because this kind of sounds like some sort of a demon, but the internet says decaying flesh, so it's got to be 100% true because nothing's ever wrong on the internet. Robin already told us that. Witnesses claim to hear the sound of something splashing in the water below as if it's trudging out of the water.
That's creepy. Oh my gosh. I cannot imagine having your car stopped in the middle of this.
And you just hear something in the water. Because if you hear
And your
water,
lights
something's
are off.
in the water. So, but it's under the bridge, though, so you'd never see it. And the other thing that people report, aside from the water, is it's said that you hear a deep, guttural, unsettling laugh as it approaches you. I'm sure that's exactly how it sounds. I'm just going to isolate that and we can sell it and make some money. Not really. So what else? Those who have been lucky enough to actually catch a glimpse of the Goatman describe him in one of two ways. One is that of a man with a goat's head, similar to the way that we have described him so far, who is carrying either two goat's heads under his arms or a mixture of one goat head and one human head.
No, what?
Others describe a creature that's half man, half goat, with a goat's head, a man's body, and goat's legs and hooves, which is basically the description of a satyr.
Yeah, I was going to say.
And
Satyr.
What?
So I said I was going to say, and then I was like,
oh, tur. Got
sorry,
it.
Satyr.
For those of you who don't know what a satyr is, it's like an evil Mr. Tumnus. And there's my Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe joke.
If you've watched Pan's Labyrinth, the main dude that the girl talks to, the kid talks to,
is a satyr, right? Yeah. And it's funny because I wrote down here for myself, like, Mr. Tumnus is a character from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And then I put, come to think of it, if you don't know what a satyr is, it's pretty stupid for me to assume that you know Mr. Tumnus and The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And then I put, Jesus, people, work with me here. It's not my fault there's not an Avenger out there to use in this example. And as a side note, did everyone see Endgame? Oh my God, it was so good. But was anyone else, like, super angry at the lack of satyrs? I can't get over it. Anyways, when it comes to this place,
I'm just speechless.
I know a lot of you folks might want to go, especially because we do have a large contingent of listeners that live in the Texas region. I know Dallas, if you're on the wrong side of Texas, is still really far away. I'm not saying you should go, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of the stuff that I found on the internet of people who have gone. So first and foremost, Zach Bagels and Co. did cover this topic. They went there, and shocker, while they were there, they claimed to have, quote, possibly captured evidence of the Goatman. As a spoiler, they did not.
What a bunch of twats.
I have heard, and I read this on the Ghost Adventures Reddit, which is like supposedly,
I bet it's a bunch of haters.
Supposedly dedicated fans to this, and they all talk about like, this is the episode where I decided I hate this fucking show. And apparently during this, Zach decides that he senses the demon of
blind?
the Goatman, and he says he's possessed. And he says that the demon is forcing him to choke himself. And at some point in the episode, he chokes himself. And it's just like, are you serious, man? So here's the thing, too. When I decided to cover this topic, I figured I'd cover the legend and we go over it. And the things that are said to happen if you summon the Goatman. And I figured if I came up a little short on this topic, because I knew it wasn't going to be a full-blown tons of history, lots of research, going through spools of newspaper type of topic, that I was going to hit up the interwebs and find some first-hand accounts, not Zach Bagel stuff, but first-hand accounts of people who visited the Goatman's bridge, which I did. I found some of this stuff, and what most of them have in common, and it's almost all of the ones I found, and I found probably close to 20, is almost all of them claim that the bridge and the surrounding area is not haunted whatsoever, and that the local legend is nothing but nonsense. As a person who grew up,
it's just a fun legend.
I mean, it's not that fun. It's a bunch of KKK people like murdering black people.
But I mean,
so I kind of hate the origin of this legend, where it's
the origin is horrible.
Yeah.
But for kids, teenagers that want to go out there and do something
stupid. It's a spooky story where you can go hang out at a bridge and maybe be creeped out because you're in the middle of the woods and
you're
it's
dark.
It's an old relic that's this historical landmark because it's been around for so long. And then, of course, it's like, we'll turn out your lights and then maybe creepy stuff will happen.
But when you're in the dark, your car's off, lights are off, you're on this bridge, this old bridge, you hear water, you hear the
water thing would creep me the F out.
The creaking of the bridge, everything is going to freak you out.
The bridge is totally going to creak with your car parked on it, by the way. That's just how bridges work. So, and it's going to sound like someone's creeping up on you. So it's a fun, like, idea behind going and exploring it and maybe getting yourself a little bit freaked out. That said, like I found multiple accounts of hunters that state that they hunt in this area and they've never had any experiences. I found experiences of disappointed, what I call Scooby-Dooers, who state that they waited for hours with no activity, or the activity that they heard sounded just like local wildlife. And in fact, the only few things I was able to dig up that claimed there was activity was in a subreddit dedicated to stories that, quote, may or may not be true, which I wish they would just split this Reddit where it's like, these are the stories that are true and these are the stories that aren't. But of course it's Reddit. So they're like, hey, let's post all the stuff on here. Some of it might be real. Some of it might not be. So the first thing that I read states that this person went with a local group of paranormal investigators, and it does sound fairly real. And they went to the bridge, and while they're at the bridge, they asked for the spirit of Oscar Washburn to turn off their flashlights. And of course, in this story, it states that after they asked this, all of their flashlights went dead and would not turn back on. The author then states that they saw something moving around in the distance that wasn't human, and that he got a picture of it. And sometime after posting the story and people responded like, we want to see the picture, he actually posted a picture. And I will say this, it certainly seems like it's a picture of the bridge, or if not, a bridge that looks incredibly similar. But the quote-unquote thing that he got a picture of, I swear, it was raining when he took the picture, so you can see like the rain coming down. And then you can see like a cloud of mist, which is clearly someone's breath who's standing next to the camera, like blowing into it. And then like they're taking a picture of it. And what's so funny to me is that the reason you can see this breath, it's not because of the flash of the camera. There's a flashlight in the photo that supposedly wasn't supposed to be working. And it's what's illuminating this breath. And it's like, oh, this was the creepy mist I was talking about. And at no point in the story doesn't even mention mist. It just acts like they saw the Goatman.
I feel like we've had spooky friends that have sent us pictures of mist that looks like faces. And
We've
like
heard
that.
of stuff that's mist, but this looks entirely staged. So I was like, well, this one's not that reliable. And on top of that, clearly like the story got popular enough where they're like, I'm actually going to go to the bridge and take a picture now. And like, there's no other people in the picture. It was just like, it's a little bit ridiculous, but I was like, all right, there's one story. So that said, there's another story I found. And this one, I mean, it tried as hard as it could to sound real. And it's essentially a young boy and a young girl, like mid-teenagers, that decide they're going to go to this bridge and get bored sitting in their car and decide to wander in the woods to find the Goatman. If you're bored sitting in your
car, just make out.
I know. I'm like, what are you doing, man? Like, this is your chance. So eventually they go into these woods, and of course they find him, and he roars and attacks them. And the writer of the story claims that the Goatman took his girlfriend, and then he promptly ran back to her car, which they had taken, which conveniently had the keys left in the ignition, started it, and drove off. And he ended his story by saying that he thinks he hears, quote, the bleating of a goat in the distance, which is officially the worst final line I've ever read in any story. Because it's like, can you imagine that being scary, where it's like you're sitting in your house and you're really scared and you're like, eh. Like, it just wouldn't work for me.
It's the remix to Ignition.
I hate you so much.
Fresh out the kitchen.
So one of these stories that I found is like, sounds like a real visit masquerading as a paranormal experience, while the other is just poorly written fiction. And it was really annoying that this is just about everything I could find that's supposed to be quote unquote experiences with the Goatman's bridge. I mean, I honestly looked for about an hour, and I was like, I just kept finding people shitting all over the story and saying like there's nothing there. And I was like, show me something where someone says they found something or saw something or heard something. And the stuff that I kept finding, I'm like, oh, this is just such Ghost Adventures nonsense. So what was really funny is that this story about the kid who had his girlfriend taken and he took her car and drove home, is that the first comment after it is, quote, good luck explaining to the cops why you have a missing girl's car and her keys. And I was just like, oh, it's so good. Like, come on, people. Like, think through your plot holes before you post this fucking nonsense.
That's straight up trying to make like some creepypasta.
Yeah, it's
thing.
like, it's not exactly a creepypasta subreddit, but at the same time, it's like the way they put that in there is like, you can tell the truth here or you can lie. And I'm just like, I really hate the fact that I have to sift through this nonsense to try and find something to tell our listeners about. So I decided instead, I tell you my frustrations. And maybe some of you out there have visited the Goatman's Bridge, and we certainly want to hear about it. And if any of you go, we're not saying you should go. But if you do, Facebook Live, if you see anything, take videos, take pictures, and make sure you keep a healthy dose of skepticism with you, because every time you see something, like there's going to be deer in these woods. You shouldn't just immediately be like, Goatman, and the deer is like, what the hell are those humans doing?
Oh, dear.
So I hate you so much. It certainly seems that this local legend, and even though it has this colorful yet awful origin, doesn't have a whole lot going for it in the way of authenticity. But it's another good example of a story that realistically has been told for a lot of generations. And I think it's really interesting when you look at cultures and when you look at local legends of people who've stayed in the same areas where it passes from like one generation to the next generation to the next generation, and people keep going and checking it out. And like those are the things that I checked out when I was young. And like maybe there is a vengeful goat man haunting this bridge who just is like 0 for 1,000 on killing people and taking their revenge, or maybe he just doesn't come out that often. It's like one of those things where like I totally don't believe it. But that said, if we're ever in the area, I would 100% go to see if anything were to happen. Like I will park my car, knock 3 times, and see what happens. So it's an interesting topic
you can
and
go
one.
alone.
No, you're going because it'll be way funnier if you're there freaking out and we're just recording it the whole time. So that's what I intend to do if I'm ever in the area. And any of you who are local to that area, if you've heard stories of this, send them to us because we totally want to hear them. But that, dear listener, is the story of the Goatman's Bridge.
Cool. Nice. Good job.
Thank you. It wasn't that long, but I tried to do as much digging so I could try and make it fun because it is one of those local legends. And I'm just like, all right, like let's hear about people who've actually gone there and let's like, dig into the origins as much as possible. Like I did Moody's Light because I've been to Moody's Light, and there are so many stories for the origin of Moody's Light where I was like, I know the Goatman's Bridge is going to do the same thing. And sure enough, there's at least 4 origin stories I found. You don't get to say that. You haven't watched The Last Dragon yet. But sure enough, just saying. It was fun to do, and I hope you folks enjoyed it. So I think that's just about everything that we have. So we're going to do the normal outro stuff. Please listen. So if you want to send us your creepy story, especially if it's a Goatman story, email storytime@scarish.com. Go to scarish.com and click on Contact Us and fill out that form. And you can go to our social medias. So Twitter is @ScarishPod, Instagram is @ScarishPodcast, and Facebook is facebook.com/ScarishPodcast. If you want to join our active communities, and I do mean active, when you go to Facebook, you can click on the Scarish Spooky Friends group. It's an open group. I think we have to accept you, but honestly, it gets accepted within like 10 seconds usually. And join that.
It's crazy how fast it is.
We go to do it, and we're like, who's done it? Because we have some moderators on there. Shout out to Jeremiah, who's amazing at that. And join up, and you can see all the crazy stuff we post. It's a lot of creepy stuff. It's also a lot of funny stuff. And then you can also join our Discord. And the best way to do that is to go to scarish.com. You'll see all our social media links on the right-hand side if you scroll down. Click on the Discord one, and you're instantly joined to the server. And it's essentially, for those of you who've never used Discord before, it's a giant chat room with a bunch of different rooms that are named different things. So we have, like, the not-so-spooky memes, which is all the memes that are not scary. It's a great source of memes if you're a meme person that wants to send them to your friends. There's so many. We have a Game of Thrones chat. We had a bunch of debate about what happened in this episode 4 and like whether or not this was out of character and how this matches up with the books, and it's really fun to talk about. We have a Disney one. We have a bunch of different stuff.
Yeah, we have Disney. We have Haunting at Hill House. We have that one. It's just really fun to talk to all these people that are into the same things you are. It's pretty cool.
We have a homegrown horror channel where you can post yours and get some instant feedback. We have a general channel where you can just talk about whatever you want. So there's a bunch of stuff. So we would love it if you came out and joined us on Discord. We're over 200 people right now, and actively we have at least like 20 to 30 people in there at any given time.
I can't believe how many people are in the Spooky Friends group. We're over 666.
Yeah, we hit that earlier this week. Then we pushed up to like 668. Then some accounts got deactivated, so we went back down to 666. And I was like, we have to get off this number. And then we got to 667, which I think is where we're floating right now. But yeah, it's really cool to see this grow, and we appreciate all of you and everything that you guys do. Robin, if folks wanted to donate to us, how can they do that?
So we do have a Patreon, patreon.com/scarishpodcast. As I said earlier, patrons get an exclusive discount for our Teespring store for the month of May. So if you join now, you can get a discount and buy some cool Scarish merch on our Teespring, which is also located on our Scarish store. On our website.
If you go to scarish.com and you click the store, all of our products are compiled because we have like 3 different stores.
There's new stuff that I put up, so you got to put up new stuff.
Okay, we'll get that updated. I know that there's a blanket now, so that's pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah. And then if you go to Ko-fi or Coffee, ko-fi.com/scarishpodcast, that is one-time donations, and those help us upgrade our studio setup. So our mic and our video camera and all this stuff has been able to be upgraded because of you guys, and we really can't do this without you. So go ahead and go do that. It'd be great.
Absolutely. And like Robin said, like we couldn't do this without you, and we appreciate every single one of you. So thank you for listening. And
all of our patrons, you guys are freaking awesome.
Yeah, we appreciate, even if you don't donate, even if you just listen, every download we get, every person that talks about us on social media or just tells a friend like, hey, you should listen to this. so many of you that like participate in the community say like, oh, so and so got me into this, and it's so cool to see like people bring in other people, and it's just really encouraging, and it makes us want to keep going, and seeing the numbers continue to grow is an amazing thing, and we really enjoy it. So thank you to everyone. But I think it's just about everything that we have for this episode. So Robin, I guess go ahead and sign us out.
Keep on creeping out, and we'll talk to you guys later.
Bye.